This video describes how Oregon state law defines gender identity. This term is defined in Oregon state law in two different ways. Let's take a look at whether either of these definitions make any sense. The first definition is in Senate Bill 577, enacted into law in July 2019. This bill defines gender identity to mean an individual's gender-related identity, appearance, expression, or behavior, regardless of whether the identity, appearance, expression, or behavior differs from that associated with the gender assigned to the individual at birth. The phrase, regardless of whether the identity, appearance, expression, or behavior differs from that associated with the gender assigned to the individual at birth, can be eliminated because the definition of gender identity does not depend on it. We know this because of the words regardless of. This leaves us with gender identity means an individual's gender-related identity, appearance, expression, or behavior. We can't use the words gender-related identity in the definition of gender identity because we don't know what it means. This is a circular definition. So we'll remove the words gender-related identity from the definition. Now we're left with gender identity means an individual's appearance, expression, or behavior. But this is not a definition that describes anything in particular. It hasn't said anything of useful substance to define gender identity. Now let's take a look at the second definition of gender identity found in Executive Order Number 19-08, enacted in October 2019. This document states that sexual orientation or gender identity means an individual's actual or perceived heterosexuality, homosexuality, bisexuality, or gender identity, regardless of whether the individual's gender identity, appearance, expression, or behavior differs from that traditionally associated with the individual's sex at birth. Again, we can remove the phrase beginning with regardless of, since that phrase is irrelevant to the definition. This leaves us with sexual orientation or gender identity means an individual's actual or perceived heterosexuality, homosexuality, bisexuality, or gender identity. But again, we cannot use a term in the definition of that term. So we'll remove gender identity from the definition. This leaves us with sexual orientation or gender identity means an individual's actual or perceived heterosexuality, homosexuality, or bisexuality. This is a definition of sexual orientation, but everything defining gender identity has been removed because either it was irrelevant to the definition or it was a circular definition. So we are left none the wiser about what gender identity means. Neither of these definitions say anything of useful substance to define gender identity in Oregon state law. So, how should we interpret Oregon state law related to gender identity? Who knows? We'd like to imagine that lawyers writing Oregon state law would use precise language and well-defined terms. This is obviously not the case in Oregon.